I've been to see him. He looks a lot like you.
Who are you?
I'm what's left. Or maybe I'm all there ever was.
I meant your name.
The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise means a lot to me. I'll never quite forget the first time I played Sonic Adventure DX at a friend's house, or being oblivious to Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06's obvious problems. I loved Sonic Unleashed when it first came out, as I did with most Sonic games. Generations continues to be one of the best games in the franchise on a pure gameplay level, even 13 years later. Eventually, though, I began to feel my love for the franchise dip. Sonic Lost World left a bad taste in my mouth, Sonic Boom still feels like a fever dream, and Sonic Forces was a massive letdown. Even though I enjoyed Sonic Mania, and I was actively reading the comics at the time, the franchise still made me feel empty. Especially after the announcement of the live-action movie and that horrid design, I was genuinely unhappy as a fan. However, Sonic's redesign for the movie completely changed my tune, and I walked away more excited than I had been in a long time as a Sonic fan. While the movie itself isn't perfect, its pitch-perfect portrayal of Sonic and Eggman was more than enough to satisfy me. Fast forward to June 2021 and the Sonic Symphony, and I wasn't expecting the show to make me feel seen the way it did. The show is spectacular and a real treat for any fan of the franchise, and lit a small spark of hope for the future. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was also fantastic, with maybe the best ever portrayal of Knuckles and an equally amazing Tails. I felt genuinely content at this point that maybe Sonic Team had lost the plot, but that's okay. I can get my fix in other places. I'll always have the good times after all. And who knows, maybe Frontiers will be good. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced in early 2022 for release in the same year. I had tried both prior numbered Xenoblade games and found them to not be for me due to their heavily MMO-inspired game design. I was actually more excited for Soul Hackers 2, believe it or not. However, the game really appealed to me aesthetically, especially with the slicker designs of the characters over the clunky designs of Xenoblade 2. So I asked for the game for my birthday and got it alongside Soul Hackers 2. Soul Hackers 2 is a game I dropped after the first few hours. Now you might ask how these two games are at all similar besides being both released in 2022. While not comparable in any objective measurement from game systems to even art style, I played both games around the same time. I actually had surgery in late September of that year, so I spent a good portion of October playing Xenoblade 3, while Sonic Frontiers came out in early November, and both had a massive emotional impact on me. As such, I want to take a look at not just these two games and how they connect in my mind, but also the ways in which these two games feel like a culmination of every other game I've played in some way. Before we dig in, let's get the spoiler warnings out of the way. This entire video will contain story spoilers for every Sonic game, every Xenoblade game, Nier Replicant and Automata, all Kingdom Hearts games, and Persona 3. Content warning, mentions of suicide, violence, and war. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 opens strong, and I mean strong. The tone, the cinematography, the soundtrack, everything immerses the player in the battle. Even small things like the pace at which the characters run heightens the urgency of the moment. It makes the moments following the initial battle hit all the harder. Seeing the soldiers walk away while Noah plays his off-singing tune on the flute is a striking image, especially after we get to see that the small amount of downtime between fights is only filled with thoughts of small escape and making sure they're ready for the next fight. While it's fun to see Noah, Uni, Lance, and Riku banter, the horrible truth of their reality begins to settle in. One of the party's companions, Mwamba, dies pretty early on. a particular tragedy to the party since his homecoming, the day of his death, was so close. It's drilled into the player's head that survival is the only value given to the soldiers of this world, and their only goal is to reach their natural death rather than die on the battlefield. The only thing Noah, Lance, Uni, and Riku can do is continue their mission and come into direct conflict with Mio, Senna, and Taion, effectively the group's equals on the other side of the war, with Mio even being an off-seer like Noah. Naturally, the two groups are distrusting of each other and begin their fight. Xenoblade 3 is under no illusion that any of what's happening is normal, even for Xenoblade, and this is represented first by Guernica. While the main cast's lifespan is 10 years, Guernica has lived 60, cluing us into the fact that an expected human lifespan still exists in this fantastical world. More questions present themselves in the form of Mobius, a creature that attacks Guernica and the party. Guernica entrusts the power of Ouroboros to the group of 6, giving Noah and Mio access to a fusion transformation that can push back Mobius. After they do, Guernica gives them words of wisdom that eventually sets the 6 of them on their journey after they all realize they're fugitives from their respective societies. Sonic Frontiers makes a lacking first impression. The cutscenes are a bit stilted and standard fare. The reuse of Green Hill is uninteresting at best, and when you reach Kronos Island, the art direction is lacking that Sonic flair. Even games I didn't enjoy as much, like Colors and Forces, had a distinct style to them that feels entirely lacking here. While I don't think Sonic can't exist in a semi-photorealistic world, this art style doesn't suit the character. The best thing the game does, however, is take the training wheels off early. As soon as the main systems are explained, the player is let loose on Kronos Island. Sage and the Titan Giganto also make a strong first impression as villains, with Giganto throwing Sonic into a wall mercilessly. Pretty early on, this is a version of Sonic clearly written by someone familiar with the character. His actions make sense, he doesn't crack jokes at every second the way he did in the last 4 games, and his motivations make a lot of sense. Kronos Island does a good job as a tutorial area, feeling accommodating to someone who might not be familiar with the controls, while also feeling uniquely built for 3D Sonic specifically. Grind rails abound, dash pads, small mid-area challenges, the list goes on. While each individual task might be a bit boring in concept or execution, none of them overstay their welcome. Similarly, while every cyberspace stage might not be a hit, most of them are the length of your average level in Sonic Forces, meaning they won't last too long. The combat in Frontiers is a fun loop of attack, parry, and while not every enemy is particularly fun to fight, looking at you, Squid, especially the more gimmicky bosses that don't actually focus on combat but some other kind of challenge, battles against the more traditional enemies are mostly a decent time. Something Sonic Frontiers has a decent handle on is the inherent intrigue of a location in its Sonic's world that the characters don't know anything about. Often, Sonic stories are at their best when they're about Sonic facing an entity from the past, be it Chaos, Shadow, or even Dark Gaia, and it becomes apparent that the Starfall Islands have a significant place in Sonic's world's history, even though it's unclear how they fit into the broader picture. Amy stands out as the only of Sonic's 3 friends in this game that doesn't feel like she has anything to do. She and Sonic have a few moments that are nice, but Kronos Island feels like it's Sonic's show that Amy is in, rather than the next 2 islands which feel tailor-made for Knuckles and Tails respectively. It's a shame too, because I can see that Sonic Team wants to develop Amy further, but her presence feels ever so slightly forced in this island. Xenoblade 3's second chapter introduces us to the new class system, where every character can eventually learn every combat role available in the game. This allows for quite a bit of creativity in the combat system, which helps combat feel fresh consistently. Combined with the ability to swap party members on the fly, combat is as fresh as it's ever been for the Xenoblade series. The job system also allows for an immense amount of customization, giving the player a large toolkit in which to tune a specific playstyle. Maybe you like wearing down your opponent slowly, in which case you'll end up filling your roster with tanks and healers and relying on damage over time. Or maybe you're like me and you like big numbers, in which case the Incursor class is for you, with its ability to reach high numbers off of critical hits while buffing your Incursor with multiple Signifiers. Or maybe you're more about optimizing your chain attacks, in which case you're not only going to be fiddling with your main party's classes, but you also want to take into consideration what hero you want to take along. Xenoblade 2's blade system was fantastic on a conceptual level. Alternate characters with their own story quests that also acted as party members who had a massive implication for combat? Sign me up. Xenoblade 2's blades were largely hampered by two major problems. First, being the random element, making it hard to get rarer blades, meaning you had to grind a lot to get the especially rare ones. Secondly, Xenoblade 2's progression system for blades effectively requires the use of a guide in some instances, since otherwise you're spending a lot of time running around accomplishing absolutely nothing because the requirements can be hyper-specific. I adopted the critical hit spam strategy during my playthrough of 2 with Mithra, and she wasn't maxed out at the end of the day, which, yes, means I didn't spend a lot of time leveling up my blades, but also the tedium required just didn't feel worth it, and I never felt a tangible reward from progressing blade affinity charts. 3 fixes this in a lot of ways by implementing a more traditional leveling system for the classes, only forcing the player to use the classes to progress them for the characters, and using specific side quests to block further progression of the class, namely the hero quests focused on a specific character the party can receive a class from. For instance, Xeon, the commander of Noah Lance and Uni's colony, has 2 quests like all heroes, especially given every hero's massive contribution to chain attacks where they grant specific special effects that are different across heroes. Heroes feel like a much smoother integration into the systems of the game, especially since unless a hero quest is required for story progression, the player is rarely required to have a specific hero, the way Xenoblade 2 required the use of field skills attached to each blade. Chapter 2 also accounts for the reason I found myself hooked on Xenoblade 3, specifically the main story quest. Colony 4 and Silvercoat Ethel are effectively brainwashed by Mobius to attack Noah in the game, who have to fight for their lives against someone who saved them in the past. The fight against Ethel is nail-biting the first time through, given how hyped up she's been by the game up to this point. Then the reveal that Mobius is effectively feeding off the lives of the soldiers really drives home how messed up this world is, given that Mobius are also the leaders of their respective colonies on each side. However, equally as amazing is the party's resolve in stopping Mobius, culminating in an amazing battle that ends in Noah and Mio leaping up and destroying the Flame Clock, Mobius' method of control over the colonies. This is an early high point for the game, which leads me to... the time is 3 a.m. It's my first night with Sonic Frontiers, and while I'm having a reasonably decent time with the game, it has failed to wow me. By all accounts, it seems pretty similar to Mario Odyssey in structure with a Sonic skin over it, which is fine but doesn't exactly inspire confidence in the rest of the game. Once you finish the janky puzzle gating the entrance to Giganto's boss arena, Sonic comes face to face with the Titan, climbs him up Shadow the Colossus style, and obtains the final Chaos Emerald. And when I tell you I felt feelings I hadn't felt in a long time as Undefeatable starts playing in the background as Super Sonic hovers down and smiles at Giganto, I think I'm understating it. This fight brought me back to the greatest moments in Sonic history, be it the Final Hazard, Perfect Chaos, Perfect Dark Gaia, Merlina, Metal Overlord, and so many others. Not only did it call back to these fights, however, it surpassed them. Undefeatable being a unique theme rather than the main theme was such a treat, as I hadn't been exposed to any of the vocal themes besides Vandalize and I'm Here, meaning this song took me completely by surprise. Another thing this fight did exceedingly well was kick my teeth in. Admittedly, I had 0 rings going in, so I only had 100 rings as Supersonic, but I died pretty often. Giganto is the easiest fight for me nowadays, but that's after practice and knowing that I need to prepare beforehand. However, every time I lost, I just had to go again because the fight was so much fun to play. Giganto's massive attacks, Supersonic doing some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen him do, the fight actually using the base game's combat system instead of a whole new idea. This fight felt like the culmination of the entire franchise for me, and I just couldn't believe this was the first Supersonic fight in the game. Xenoblade 3 does something most JRPGs have a hard time with, and that's communicating the massive scale of its world. Chapter 2 takes place in one section of the Fornus region, while Chapter 3 has the player exploring the rest of it and heading to the Pentelas region to finish the chapter. It's at this point that Xenoblade 3 is content to settle into a stride. The party travels around freeing colony after colony from their flame clocks, acting as something of a vigilante group. Special mention goes to Alexandria for a really cool introduction that sets up what is likely to be a future encounter rather than an immediate mission. Riku and Manana, the party's resident Nopon, have a fun mandatory hero quest that allows them to join in battle, though depending on your setup, you might be better off going with a different hero. Chapter 3 sees the party returning to Tion's old colony, where we discover Yoran, an old friend of Noah, Lance, and Uni who died in an accident, has become Mobius, and is mind-controlling Tion's old leader. This is also where the Agnium members of the party gain the ability to form their own Ouroboros forms, allowing the party to use their Ouroboros forms in chain attacks. While not the final in-story power-up, this moment certainly completes the combat system and goes a long way towards making chain attacks as fun as they are. After the high that is the Giganto fight, it makes sense that Sonic Frontiers would want to step back and allow the player to breathe. As such, Ares Island is the perfect fit. It's easily the biggest in terms of sheer scale. The desert is a perfect place to have Knuckles and Sonic effectively just chill out, and it acts as a natural successor to Kronos Island. If Sonic Frontiers ever gets a sequel, Ares Island is the model I'd want it to follow. The wide open spaces lead naturally into tight, confined puzzles. The progression feels incredibly natural. The platforming is at its best. And while not a massive step up from Kronos Island's substandard art, Ares Island manages at least to distinguish itself from Kronos visually. Xenoblade 3 reaches another early high point midway through Chapter 4 with Mio shouting at Noah, venting about how little time she has left to live, while they are sidetracked yet again by a mission to invade the Kavesi castle and take down their super weapon. Before this, Noah and Mio have been on the same page about everything, so not only is this a nice refreshment from the usual light banter between the party members, it also acts as a catalyst for one of the most important moments of the game. Noah and Mio swapping flutes is genuinely heartwarming and clearly the beginning of their extremely heart-wrenching romance. While the romances between the other party members is left a little more ambiguous, it's nice to see a genuine love story in a genre that is often afraid to go the distance. Where Noah and Mio have a heart-to-heart, so too do Sonic and Knuckles. Knuckles is arguably the single most important side character in Sonic history. His initial appearance in Sonic 3 has established a long-held tradition of characters who work with Eggman while having separate motives from him. Without Knuckles, the franchise never sees the likes of Shadow, Gamma, or the Chaotix, just to name a few. However, Knuckles has struggled to maintain a presence throughout the games. From his strong showing in the adventure games as the gullible yet lovable rival to Sonic, to swiftly being converted into a staunch ally of Sonic's throughout the mid-2000s, to the end of the 2010s when he is just the leader of the Resistance, rather than the protector of the Master Emerald like he should be. Frontiers does a decent job of re-establishing Knuckles and Sonic as having a close friendship that was born out of previous conflict, allowing Knuckles to step back into a much more independent role, something they were clearly trying to do with Amy, but failed due to also juggling the Coco and Sonic himself. Knuckles even ponders going out and exploring without being tied down to the Master Emerald, something Sonic strongly encourages. And here, I think, is where I want to examine where these franchises intersect. Because Xenoblade 3 and Sonic Frontiers are both about to have a massive blowout of incredible set pieces, but what connects them in my head so much that I would make a whole video about them? Kingdom Hearts is one of the most important game franchises to me. It's one of the first RPGs I ever played. KH2 remains one of my most played games of all time, and I cried multiple times during Kingdom Hearts 3. If Sonic is the reason I enjoy media in the first place, Kingdom Hearts introduced me to the specific things I like in media that Sonic doesn't have to offer. One of the most famous scenes in the franchise is...
No!
Hey! You're the kid's captain! You gotta get up!
Come on, wake up!
I'm sorry about the ice cream!
Goofy?
Goofy!
This is not happening. It can't be happening. It can't. They'll pay for this.
A scene that is equal parts funny and cool. In this scene, Mickey Mouse does a cool anime cloak throw, whips out his sword, and charges into battle. If that isn't the epitome of Sonic's appeal, a cartoon character taking a situation as seriously as it calls for, then I don't know what is. Roxas, as my favorite character in the franchise, is a perfect example of the link between these two franchises for me. His origin and the secret endings of the first Kingdom Hearts has the perfect amount of mystery, while also introducing us to some cool ideas the series would run with later on. His melancholic, angsty narrative about learning what being a person is, while also experiencing the tragic loss of a dear friend culminates in his fight with Riku, and an eventual mental battle with Sora where he accepts that he can't be his own person. Noah himself is not dissimilar to Riku. He's not like Riku, not that much. He's not. Noah himself is not dissimilar to Roxas. Both are a bit socially awkward, both of them care deeply about their loved ones, both of them struggle with the nature of their existence, and so on. It's not lost on me that Tetsuya Nomura and Tetsuya Takahashi's history with the Final Fantasy franchise has influenced their respective works, albeit in different ways at times. It's what made Nomura such a good fit for Xenoblade 2's Torna designs. why I felt such a connection to those specific characters. The blend of cool character design and movesets with both serious themes and lighthearted storytelling is at the heart of shonen media, something both Sonic and Xenoblade share. Sonic introduced me to these concepts, Kingdom Hearts solidified my love for those ideas, and Xenoblade 3 executed on them flawlessly. Following a climactic battle against the Kevesi Queen, Melia? As in Melia from Xenoblade 1? The party is confronted by Monica Vandham, Guernica's daughter. She invites them to the city where they learn about the natural human lifespan and how humans actually procreate and the like. Yeah, that's pretty funny. We learn that the city, or the Lost Numbers, are a third faction of normal humans. It is revealed that both Kevesi and Agnian soldiers are essentially clones born from the souls of the dead, essentially recycled soldiers so that Mobius can stay alive for eternity, meaning the war almost every character we've met up to this point is ultimately a pointless one. We also learn that the queens are essentially fakes, which one could already infer from the fact that Queen Melia was a robot controlled by Mobius. The party receives a boat that can explore the massive Cadencia region. At times, Xenoblade 3 feels several times larger than both 1 and 2 combined, and the Cadencia region feels like the culmination of that. Feels like a mini Wind Waker, actually, with all of the disparate islands and fun things to discover outside of the main plot. The party's mission is simple: free Monica's daughter Gondor, and in turn retrieve a key to where the Queen of Agnes, Nia, is sleeping. So, after some shenanigans involving breaking into the prison Gondor is held in and passing off as normal prisoners, they stage a breakout and... I imagine Sonic feels much about Tails the same way I do about my little brother. Tails is smart, cheerful, and a true prodigy, not unlike my little brother. I think that's kind of why I still love the character, because I grew up identifying with Tails, but now that I'm older I can still see Tails through Sonic's eyes and relate to those feelings. Unfortunately for Tails, his past few roles in the games have been lacking at best. From being a massive nothing burger in Sonic 06 and then effectively being relegated to guy in the chair for every main series game after that, to his role in Forces being a massive bastardization of the character, it's hard to have that same affection for a new portrayal of the character. However, what they did here with Tails in Sonic Frontiers is smart. While essentially a retread of his arc from Adventure 1, it's nice to see that Tails recognizes that he faltered in Forces and wants to reclaim that independence, something Sonic is more than happy to encourage him in. Chaos Island is, for a lot of people, the turning point of Sonic Frontiers. Where the first two islands were solid, Chaos Island is janky, smaller, has too many 2D sections, and the list goes on. In a lot of ways, I feel the same pain. Where Chronos was a good introduction and Ares felt like it fulfilled the promise of Chronos, Chaos feels like it's ripped out of a different game almost. It's impossible to go 2 seconds without getting caught in an automated segment where suddenly the perspective is shifted to 2D, not to mention the general geometry of the island doesn't lend itself to a fun experience of Sonic platforming. Combine that with an already extremely janky camera and movement system, and you have a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, Chaos Island doesn't last too long compared to Ares, meaning you'll be in and out sooner than later. After one of the worst pinball games I've ever played.
Brother, please start moving. Brother. Brother, wait a minute. If I give my brother this, he'll move again. I need a container. I can use this. It will be okay now, brother. Brother. Just a little more.
Nier Automata is a formative piece of media for me. It has so much of what I love, be it pretty anime characters, awesome action set pieces, philosophical debates through combat, the list goes on and on. In a lot of ways, Xenoblade 3 reminds me of Automata. Both are about characters who have been lied to their whole lives, both are heavily inspired by Western philosophy and ideology, both make some pretty harsh critiques of modern society, and both have overly pretty anime characters. Honestly, you could put Mio in 2B's outfit, and I would think the cat ears are just an accessory. Automata's story is a bit outside the scope of this already out-of-hand video, but suffice to say... does it suffice? Should I say suffice? Yes, let's say suffice. Automata's story is a bit outside the scope of this already out-of-hand video, but suffice to say, it's a pretty heavy narrative centered around a somewhat positive interpretation of nihilism. My religious heart rejected a lot of these messages when I was first playing the game, but it didn't stop me from being utterly captivated by the game's world and narrative. 2B, 9S, and A2 are all-time favorites of mine. I cried when I got to ending C and realized the game was actually over this time, only to cry even more after ending E. I've replayed this game who knows how many times, and it still hits me in the feels now. What Automata gets so right is creating emotion out of the absurd. It is absolutely insane to think about what actually happens in the plot of any Yoko Taro game. The level of suspension of disbelief required to engage is sometimes unreachable for some. However, within that insanity is a deep emotional well of tension, connection, heartbreak, and so much more. From 9S's descent into madness to A2's rise to self-actualization, thanks to the people around her, and all of the small stories in between with all sorts of different characters. While they only make sense in some context of the universe's rule of everything will always only get worse, they create a truly memorable and worthwhile narrative. Chapter 5 of Xenoblade 3 ends with an absolute banger of a fight with Mobius N and M, officially revealing themselves to be alternate versions of Noah and Mio. Later on, it's revealed that N, as a former Ouroboros, made a choice to slaughter his loved ones in the city to bring his Mio back to life, which did a Kingdom Hearts-esque soul split of them creating the N and M we see today, and the Noah and Mio who ended up reincarnated into the meaningless war, the Endless Now, as N and M call it. N and M succeed at bringing down the party with the help of Mobius X, and the ensuing prison scene is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in any video game. Mio is fast approaching her death day, and Noah, hopelessly in love with her at this point, is helpless to save her from spending the rest of her life in a cage. The vocal theme, A Step Away, plays, and if you know me, you know I love a good vocal theme. Automata's finale feels similarly hopeless. A2 and 9S ascend the machine tower, cutting through their enemies. 9S has completely lost it at this point, whereas A2 is out for blood after witnessing the deaths of Pascal and the peaceful villagers. The two of them work together to take out the last of the machines in an awesome set piece that sees the player jumping back and forth between their perspectives, even switching rapidly between the characters during the boss fight. Finally, A2 and 9S have a conversation, where A2 drops the bomb that 2B's purpose was to kill 9S repeatedly to prevent him from discovering the truth, that humanity is extinct. None of it matters, however. 9S has succumbed to his madness, so all that's left is for them to fight. Neither victor has a particularly happy outcome either. Noah is forced to watch as Mio fades away on her homecoming, and gloats at Noah before bringing his sword down on him. I find a lot of enjoyment in plenty Sonic stories, but for my money, the greatest Sonic story ever told is Sonic and the Black Knight. Sonic is dropped into the Arthurian legends and goes on a traditional knight's quest. Eventually, his companion, Lena, is revealed to be behind everything, and Sonic loses pretty badly to her, even his talking sword Caliburn breaking. However, he stands up and heroically proclaims,
It was never about chivalry for me. I just gotta do what I've gotta do. That's all.
All three of these moments, Automata's ending E, Xenoblade 3's reveal that Mio and M swapped bodies, and Sonic reclaiming that same characterization from all the way back in 2009, all of them resonated with me in the same way. The sense of wonder and joy of something that felt hopeless being redeemed in some way. It's what media is all about to me, inspiring hope in a world that at times feels hopeless. Frontiers sends Sonic to Rhea Island. Rhea is a weird one, essentially being a group of long platforming challenges. While not horrible, it definitely feels weird having an entire island be essentially one set piece, with none of the other trappings of the other islands. Rhea doesn't even end in a boss fight, just a cutscene where Sonic sacrifices himself to save his friends, who immediately do the same thing to bring him back. It honestly falls flat, and I think is a huge reason why so many see Orenos Island as a weak finale, especially since Orenos is essentially just another half of Kronos Island. Sonic, Sage, and Eggman team up to stop the entity that brought an end to the original race that became the Coco, while Orenos is relatively inoffensive. That's kind of all it is. Nothing about it is special, which, while this avoids the Chaos Island problem of having a lot of pitfalls, means it doesn't stand out the way Ares or Kronos did. Worse still, the supreme boss at the end is laughably easy. That combined with I'm Here being the main theme of the game, and thus I'd already heard it before I played it, the fight lacked that same punch the first 3 Titans did. Add to this the fact that the true final boss is just an Ikaruga-style shmup, rather than an actual supersonic fight, and the finale just kind of falls flat on its face, which is a shame because Sage's sacrifice should have a lot more weight behind it. Chapter 6 of Xenoblade 3 takes us to the Cloud Keep, where Yoran completes his character arc and Nia awakens. Wait, that's Nia from Xenoblade 2. Yep, as she explains, the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 were created from the same world, and as such were naturally attracted to each other. However, this would cause a collision that would destroy both worlds. So, they found a way to communicate with each other and hatched a plan to save the worlds. They created Origin, which was designed to effectively save and reset the world so that they could pass by each other safely. However, the people's apprehension and fear effectively caused a glitch in the Matrix, creating Ionios as an amalgamation of both worlds. Z, the leader of Mobius, was born out of people's fears, and as such wished for the world to be eternal, trapped in an endless now. The party's mission becomes to essentially reboot Origin and recreate the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2. One thing that Xenoblade 3 excels at is fan service. The first 2 games have a presence in this one that is felt throughout, but doesn't interfere with enjoying the work on its own terms. Nia and Melia being present in this game is a treat for fans, while also serving as a window into the wider universe for those who haven't played a prior game. While other elements, such as the different races present on Ionios, are more of a fun Easter egg than something integral to the plot. Xenoblade 3 has a lot of ideas, be it nature versus nurture, sacrifice, etc. However, the primary theme of the game is nothing lasts forever. More to the point, a never-ending existence only breeds stagnation and corruption. You can see that in the soldiers of Kevis and Agnes, who can't be bothered to look outside their situation and try to free themselves. You see that even in the people of the city, who have become a bit too comfortable just surviving rather than fighting back against Mobius. It's why the several resurrections that happen in the game don't bother me that much. Yes, it renders a lot of the deaths we see in the game meaningless, but isn't that the point? If Mobius still exists, neither life or death have meaning. Everything just exists for no reason, only to prop up the corruption of the world. Not only is this a core theme of Sonic's motivations in Sonic and the Black Knight,
What good is a world that goes on forever? That sounds pretty lame.
it's also the entire foundation of Persona 3, a work that's had a profound impact on my outlook on life. At its core, Persona 3 is about death and how inescapable it is. Moreover, it's about how life must be lived to its fullest because death comes for us all. Memento mori, if you will. The main villain of the game is literally humanity's wish for death. If that isn't just Mobius with a different motivation, I don't know what is. ahead of the final battle against Z, and confronts the party on their way to save Melia. They have one more battle, and then finally reconciles with Noah, and they rejoin Kingdom Hearts style. Noah recognizes that the desire for eternity is something within all of us, a path he probably would have gone down if circumstances were changed. So, the party, after receiving a heartwarming speech from Melia, goes on their way to confront Z, to end Ionios, and allow the worlds of the Bionis and Allrest to be recreated. Isn't it so fun to spend times with characters you love that were gone for a while? Even though I played these games recently, seeing Shulk and Rex again was so fun. Tails and Knuckles and Amy being playable in the Final Horizon was such a treat, and seeing how they all played differently was even more of a delight. I already covered their playstyles in my very first video on this channel, so I'll link that in the description. But yeah, I just wanted to gush about seeing these characters I love again. Onto the video. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed takes after Torna, the Golden Country from 2 in more ways than one. They both act as separate, standalone campaigns that tie in with the main narrative without being essential to understanding it. They both have an emphasis on community, and they both act as a fantastic cap-off to an already great game. Matthew, the protagonist of Future Redeemed, is just fun to watch. Where the main casts of Xenoblade games tend to be less sure of themselves and relatively serious, Matthew charges through without hesitation and makes his point. It's actually quite refreshing and results in plenty of funny moments where he just does whatever because he thinks it's right. His sister, Niall, has gone missing, and we see a lot of flashbacks that highlight their relationship and her growing doubts about the current state of the world. She is, in fact, the very opposite of Mobius, yearning for a future while forgetting to take care of the present. It's what opens her up to being Alpha's avatar. Matthew's companion at the start of the game, is a mysterious Monado user. Wait, what? Yep, she has a Monado. It took me literally until she told Shulk that she's actually just Alvis for me to catch on that she was actually just Alvis, but it didn't stop me from eating up the fact that we had a new Monado user. Combine that with the fun playstyle that revolves around doing damage to heal, and A is actually one of my favorite characters in the franchise as a whole. Glimmer and Nicole are Rex and Shulk's children and feel right at home next to their parents. While not having a lot of screen time compared to Matthew and A, the four are a welcome addition to the party and really heighten the game. This is compounded by the inclusion of the original Colony 9 as the base of operations, which is both heartwarming and heartbreaking just to see the state of it in Ionios. Shulk reminiscing about Dunban and Fiora, Rex wishing Pyra and Mithra were around to help. The list of different winks and nods is just endless, and I loved every second of it. The Final Horizon, Update 3 of Sonic Frontiers, undoes Sonic's sacrifice and sets his 3 companions on the quest for the Chaos Emeralds, while Sonic goes off on a training arc. The Final Horizon's narrative isn't a massive improvement over the base game's Orenos Island. Sonic having a training arc doesn't do a whole lot for his character. All we get is a bit more exposition for how the ancient civilization fell. However, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy stepping into the spotlight more than makes up for it, and the difficulty spike is also something that helps the content stand on its own. The cyberspace stages are also a treat. All of them are a legit challenge in one way or another. They all offer something the stages in the base game didn't in one way or another, and they feel like complete levels. Something I haven't felt I had since Lost World back in 2013. The general difficulty spike of the Final Horizon certainly helps with this. More than once I found myself genuinely excited about finishing a challenge or solving a puzzle, something I never really felt in the base game. Aside from the supersonic fights, the base game is fairly simplistic, with the only difficulty being in some of the navigation. Final Horizon is harder than most Sonic games, period, making it a truly fun challenge for anyone who wants to make it just that. Future Redeemed was already a face melter when it began, with all of the returning and new characters it introduces, and the promise of even more lore. However, the second N takes the stage, the expansion becomes a 13 out of 10. The expansion develops his character so perfectly, adding context behind his decision to slaughter the people of the city, Alpha's plan combined with Zed's promise. Ooh, I said Zed. I should not do that. I have to be consistent. Alpha's plan, combined with Z's promise to bring Mio back, left him practically no choice, even going so far as to kill his elderly son, Gondor, Matthew's grandfather. This reveal that N and Matthew are related adds quite a bit of weight to the events of the narrative, especially knowing everything that goes down in the base game of Xenoblade 3. The final climb up Prison Island felt so perfect, like a true full circle moment from all the way back in Xenoblade 1. The final battle against N, where Matthew effectively just talk no jutsus N into submission, it's all so perfect. That's not to say anything about the quality of the side content on offer in Future Redeemed. There's easily a 25 to 30 hour game in here, and the progression systems are so flexible, it's almost hard for me to see the franchise going in any other direction. The final scene before the Alpha boss, dubbed the radio scene by fans, reminds me a lot of a Kingdom Hearts secret ending. The references are vague enough, but if you know, you know. With any luck, Tetsuya Takahashi will be able to fully realize whatever absolutely insane vision he has for this franchise, and you can bet I'll be along for the ride. The The End fight is a mixed bag, and my previous video on the subject goes into why, so I'll just steal from that. Quote, "The set piece is incredible with the end hanging over Supreme. Cyber Supersonic has some amazing visuals, and the animations are spectacular. Especially this one, where Sonic basically does an Ultra Instinct Goku move, complete with an insanely intense pose that I just love more than anything. Unfortunately, the mechanics of the fight are strange, at best. You have to dodge in order to swap targets, which the game doesn't tell you whatsoever. There's this weird mechanic where the other characters put up a shield that gets attacked, but it seems more like just an extra time limit. I'm not sure what happens when the shield is broken. The perfect parry is back, which is unfortunate, but on easy it's manageable at least. Otherwise it's another supersonic fight, which is certainly welcome. Kellen Quinn's version of I'm Here is incredible, and I love that they not only had that, but an orchestral version as well to tie the whole thing together. This fight feels like a tribute to all of the supersonic fights that came before, from the projectiles to even the camera angles. Add to that the spectacular finale, including an amazing Superman-esque shot of Sonic in space, and you've got an overall satisfying finale. I do wish the boss was a bit better mechanically, because I still think Wyvern tops it overall in terms of scale and gameplay, but this is certainly a step up from the finale of the base game by a long shot." End quote. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 must have some kind of record for the number of banger final bosses in both Alpha and Z. Alpha feels like a culmination, something right out of Xenoblade 1 while still distinctly 3 in its style, while also having a few ideas reminiscent of 2's final boss. Z is a long, epic, sometimes overly punishing fight. It's the only time in the game that the chain attack music is locked, and then to hear it come back at the end of the fight is a treat. All three of these fights feel so perfect thematically. They're a push for the future while overcoming a tyrannical figure. All three make me emotional in one way or another, and their endings are all pitch perfect.
Once again, we'll start our story anew. Don't be afraid, I will be with you. I'm here, reaching far across these new frontiers. With my life, I fight this fear. In my hands, I
The Sonic franchise has been looking up. With Superstars, Prime, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and so much more on the way, it's a genuinely exciting time to be a fan again. Sonic will always mean a lot to me, and I hope he manages to return to the glory days once more. The future is brighter than it's ever been in a long time, and we can only hope Sonic Team doesn't mess it up. While Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed ended what many would dub the Klaus saga, this likely isn't the end of Xenoblade as a franchise. Given it's reached a similar status to that of Fire Emblem, I'd be surprised if the franchise didn't continue well into the future. Monolith can basically do whatever they want, and I can't wait to see what they have in store. Thank you so much for watching through to the end. These games all mean a lot to me, and I hope I was able to communicate why. Who knows, maybe you connected with my feelings. If you have a story to share about a game that's special to you, I'd love to hear about it. With that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.